Hello, Alex from Pushing Back the Shadows here. So welcome to those of you watching this video, wherever abouts in the world you are. Today I'm going to talk to you about what I think the three biggest problems with mental health in today's world actually are. So I'd love to get discussions going. If you do want to say anything at any point during this video, then please do drop us a comment. I'd love to hear your views, your opinions on the subject. Just to start with, you can join these discussions on Facebook, on Twitter. We will be having these discussions going on and off throughout the week, so please do get involved. It would be great to get as many opinions as we can. But as I say, welcome to those of you watching wherever abouts in the world you are. I hope you're having a good day so far, and let's get cracking. So, as I said, the three biggest problems with mental health in the world today. And these are as I see them, as they're coming through, things that I've written about, things that I've picked up on Twitter, on Facebook, as I've been interacting with different people. And this video was kind of sparked off with the events that happened recently in Charlottesville in America, where they had the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis, and that big clash there. And this morning, as I was lying in bed catching up on Twitter, catching up on some of the news in the world, I happened to come across President Trump's press conference. And it was something in that kind of sparked my thoughts off and really made me want to actually put out a response to, not to that particular event, but to these problems with mental health. So the first one that I've come across is the one that was drawn kind of from the video. I don't know whether you've seen it, but basically he was talking about Charlottesville and his response to that. And as with any press conference, you had all the reporters and they were asking questions and he was then answering. And it struck me that, like a lot of politicians, and no, this isn't going to be a political video of any kind, but like with a lot of politicians, he did not listen to the questions. The people were asking, and he just started answering what he thought was the question, and really he only gave 5-6 responses. That's about it. He didn't have any responses to all the different questions, he just had a couple that he kept coming back to. Particularly with, you had both sides, and there was a fine group of people on both sides, and so on. And that strikes me as one of the biggest problems with mental health. People don't listen. It doesn't matter whether you're somebody suffering with one of those mental health conditions, it doesn't matter whether you're friends or family, or even medical professionals or somebody from the outside looking in. Nobody listens. At least not completely, not as properly as they could. I don't know how many times I've seen on Twitter where people say, nobody listens to me, nobody bothers. I try and explain how things are, nobody wants to know. And it's one thing that I've really found. When I'm talking about my mental health, people get their own ideas. They sit there and they say, oh, well, we've had this, we've had that, we know how it goes. But they don't take the time to listen to how it affects me. See, the problem with mental health is it's not something that's universal, in the sense that depression, for example, is a label that can be applied to everybody, and this is what it means. It's not like that. Depression in me is different to depression in Bob, is different to depression in Sarah, is different to depression in whoever else. There are similarities, there are crossovers, definitely, yeah. I self-harm, Bob self-harms, Sarah doesn't. But there are plenty of crossovers, but it's not a universal definition. It is a label for a very complicated, very complex problem. And you're not going to know how it affects people if you don't listen. I remember back when I was writing my original blog, Before the Morning, which I mentioned once or twice on the Pushing Back the Shadows website, I remember with that particular blog writing a post where I said, just forget what you think you know. Forget your experiences, forget what you've learned, forget everything. Treat everybody's case on an individual basis. Take the time to talk to them, get to know how it affects them, because otherwise you're not going to understand the problem. And that's something that not enough people do. Not enough people take the time to listen. Now, I know that sounds very kind of anti-friends and family, but it translates to both sides. Both sides need to listen more. And I know I'm certainly guilty of that when I've been talking about my mental health. I get so caught up in how it affects me that sometimes it's hard for me to listen to the advice I'm being given and listen to the way it makes other people feel. My mum, for example, has said that sometimes it feels like with me she's walking on eggshells. She doesn't quite know how to react. And even though I give the answers on my website and I say, look, this is what you're supposed to do, I don't necessarily listen to what she's saying and take that on board. Both sides need to listen. Otherwise, we're just a group of people making noise and not getting anywhere. And I think you'll find that with the bulk of the arguments and the debates that go on in the world today, listening is always one of the things that's missing. People jump in with their own opinions, jump in with their own feelings, and nobody really listens. How many of the friends and family who don't know how to talk to their loved ones who are suffering, how many of them could find the answers if they stopped and listened? How many people suffering with these mental health conditions could find some of the encouragement, some of the answers, and some of the things that worked if they just stopped and listened? How many conversations could be started if people listened? In terms of those conversations, if you go onto the website, you can check out our Talking Things Through series, which is where I give a lot of tips of how to get these conversations going. And unsurprisingly, the first thing I say is to listen. So I'd encourage you, if you're not very good at listening, give it a go. You'll get the answers. They might not be the answers you want, but you'll get answers. Now, the second problem that I think is one of the big problems with mental health is responsibility. We live in a culture of blame. Nobody wants to take any kind of responsibility for anything. You know, you see it all the time in the news. Oh, this group's being blamed for this, that group's being blamed for that. And nobody wants to step up and say, yeah, right, I'll take the responsibility, I'll take the blame. Nobody wants to. And you see it in everything. I mean, one example that I can think of, and it is almost kind of a funny story, for want of a better word, is where McDonald's have now started putting on their, they started it a long time ago, but they now put caution, contents hot on their coffee cups. Why? Because somebody sued them because they spilled coffee over themselves and got burned. I mean, you'd expect your cup of coffee to be hot, wouldn't you? You'd be a bit disappointed if it wasn't. But that comes from a member of the public not wanting to take responsibility for their own mishap. I've spilt my coffee, I've got burnt, I've got injured, I'm going to blame somebody else. And we see that a lot. And as I'm looking through Twitter, as I look through Facebook, and even in some of our conversations that I've had face to face with people, I see that a lot in mental health as well. There is responsibility on both sides that needs to be taken, and both sides are to blame. If we start, because I started with friends and family in the last point, if we start with the people suffering in this point, a lot of people will blame others for not getting in touch. A lot of people will blame others for not understanding, not taking an interest. And yet we refuse, and I say we because I'm good at this as well, we refuse to actually take that responsibility onto ourselves. People don't talk to me all the time. A lot of people just don't bother messaging. But I could message them. A lot of people feel they don't know how to talk about my mental health, but that could be due to some of the reactions that I give. Now, before anybody jumps down my throat, I'm not saying that this is the case in every single person. Sometimes I don't respond because my depression is that bad that I don't want to respond. I don't have the energy to respond, and there are a lot of different reasons. But I'm sure we've all felt that responsibility of, or even that bad moment where we should respond, we could respond, but we don't. I'm sure we're all guilty of that. And we're very guilty of blaming others for the way we are, even though it's not necessarily anybody else's fault. Take my depression. It's not triggered by anybody in particular. There are contributing factors, but there is no trigger. So how can I say that it's anybody else's fault? It's my mental health condition that got started. Yes, certain things haven't helped, and I can see that, but it's my responsibility. Flipping that over, looking at the friends and family side, how many people don't bother to get in touch and then say, oh, well, I never hear from them anyway? I've had people say that to me. Oh, I don't hear from you, so it's no wonder you don't hear from me. But is that all it's cracked up to be? Is that the way it should be? If somebody's got a broken leg, you message them. You say, oh, I hope you're feeling better. If somebody's got a mental health problem, you don't always. And it shouldn't be like that. And then to say, oh, well, I don't hear from them. I don't hear from them. That's... Why is it their fault? And then we also put the responsibility on in different fashions. You know, oh, you know where I am if you need me. And yet how many times during our darkest moments can we not reach out? Can we not say anything? I find that with my darkest moments, I'm not going to go to people. I can't. I've got to admit to myself that I'm struggling, and then I've got to admit to somebody else that I'm struggling. But I've actually got to go pick up the phone or log onto the computer, send a message. And when you're stuck in depression, that is a very hard thing to do. And yet people say, oh, well, I'm here if you need us. And it's at this point that I mentioned that I've written The Onus, which is on our website, and it's about putting the onus on other people and how we need to stop doing that. We need to stop blaming other people for our problems. Yes, there are times when people will be responsible. Mental health triggered as a result of some trauma. You think of like a death in the family, or rape, or abuse, or other things like that, then yes, there is a clear cause for blame. But in the day-to-day life, no. We need to stop blaming others. It's our mental health condition, this is true, but we are responsible for the way we act. We can't control the way it affects us, not all the time, but we can control the way we act. Likewise, for friends and family, we can control the way we act. We really can. Instead of pushing people away, not listening, we can listen. Instead of going gung-ho with advice, we can find out what the problem is first. It's not hard. It takes a few conversations and that's all. Now, the last problem that I've been able to identify is kind of the problem of consistency, solidarity. It kind of falls under responsibility as well, and it does tie into listening too, but it's a big problem that I find. You see, as soon as it becomes apparent that there's no quick fix, people lose interest. When my depression first kicked off, certain group of my friends were very, very interested. Oh, we're here if you need us. Let's support you. How are you doing? It's really, you're doing well, and so on and so on. But then as it became more apparent that it was a longer term problem, people dropped off. They lost interest. And out of that group of 30, 40 people, I hear from one, maybe two, in a week now. There is no consistency. You find it a lot with celebrities and mental health. When Ant McPartlin came out with his depression and his struggles, probably about a month ago now, and more recently with Sinead O'Connor in the video that she posted about her mental health, people are very quick to jump on the bandwagon. Oh, mental health, we need to do something about it because we've got celebrity A, celebrity B, celebrity C, and they've got mental health issues. But what about the rest of us? What about the people who are struggling every day, who aren't celebrities? And people are so keen, so enthusiastic to get involved as soon as there's a celebrity diagnosed. But then it fizzles out until the next celebrity comes up. And yet there are people like me, like the various charities like Mind, or even people that I've come across on Twitter like Rebecca Lombardo, who are trying to get mental health awareness raised, trying to change lives for other people. And yet nobody wants to know until the next bandwagon they can jump on. We need consistency. If you're not going to be there in the long run, don't get involved. Don't offer that support if you're then going to fizzle out, because there is no quick fix for mental illness. Likewise, with these three biggest problems that I'm highlighting, there is no quick fix. It takes society getting involved, getting together, and making a long-term, continuing effort. But it's the problem with today's world, isn't it? Nobody wants the long-term quick fix. We're a throwaway society. Something doesn't work, replace it. Nobody's interested in fixing things. They lose interest too quickly because nobody listens. Nobody wants to take any kind of responsibility. So nobody will give that consistent approach. We need to change it. Whether you're somebody who's suffering, whether you're a friend or a family member, or whether you're somebody who doesn't think that you know somebody with depression, we need to change it. And do you know what? I can't stress that enough. We live in a broken world. There is mental health everywhere. And just to backtrack momentarily, I mentioned people who suffer, I mentioned friends and family, and then I said if you're somebody who doesn't think that you know somebody with mental health, well, do you know what? You're wrong. 1 in 4 people struggle with some kind of mental health issue. I've said that before, I'll say it again. That means that everybody, everywhere, knows somebody going through it. Everybody is involved. Even if you're not struggling, guaranteed there is somebody in your circle of friends, in your family, who is struggling. It is a global, worldwide problem, and it needs to be fixed. We need to be listening to each other. We need to be taking the responsibility instead of just fobbing people off onto the next person willing to listen, or the next big organisation, or whatever it is that we send people to. We need to take responsibility. And we need to be consistent in our approach. Otherwise, we're never going to fix it. We're going to be stuck with the same problem again and again and again. So what do we do about it? How do we fix these 3 big problems? Listening, it's down to you. Anybody can listen. You don't have to have the answers. You don't even have to give advice. All you have to do is open your ears, or your eyes if it's a text message, and listen. You could do that. I can do that. We also need to accept responsibility. I am responsible for my mental health. You are responsible for your mental health. And to everybody who's not struggling with mental health, you are responsible for the way that you treat other people. If you do it, whatever your action is, you're responsible for it. And we need to be consistent. We need to recognise that it is a long-term problem. There is no quick fix, and we need to be consistent in that approach. But most of all, we need to raise the awareness. Too many people don't understand mental health. Too many people feel like they have no support, and it's on both sides. There's not enough support for people who are struggling. There's not enough support for the friends and family members who, in all honesty, are floundering because they don't know how to help. So we need to raise the awareness. We need to get the message out there. And this is where the responsibility comes in. It's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. We need to take action. So, if you're not already involved in the Pushing Back the Shadows community, I'd like to extend this invitation for you to get involved. Help us raise that awareness. We have our forums, we have posts going up, we have podcasts, videos. We're active on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and other social media. Do get involved. We need to raise that awareness. We need to alleviate these struggles, because otherwise people are going to keep suffering. People are going to keep killing themselves or harming themselves unless we take action. As I said, I'd welcome your thoughts on the matter. Please leave us a comment, wherever you're watching this, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, the blog itself. Leave us a comment. I'd like to get these discussions going, and that in itself is how you can get the discussion going. It's how you can raise awareness, how you can actually start taking responsibility. You may think in this that you've got nothing to say. Okay, maybe you don't have an opinion. In which case, just comment your name, where you've watched from, and just say, I've watched. Something like that, something simple. Or just say hi. It will be great to hear from you. Build a community, a sense of togetherness that we can then take into the next coming days, weeks, months. As I said at the start of the video, I'm Alex, and I am going to stand for mental health and raise the awareness. I really do hope that you will join me.